Alrighty then. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another ASC webinar. This one is going to be amazing, just like all the webinars. But very specifically, we hear you, and we are covering a topic that has been asked for time and time again: um, psychological safety. And in case you are new here, jump over to the chat, say hi, introduce yourself. We put these webinars on from time to time as a way to educate our community and our friends far and wide on topics that are going to help you work smarter while getting things done and having more fun. So, we have a lot to talk about, and as we were talking before we hit the live button, this is probably going to take up the whole time. And so we have an amazing person, Lauren. Lauren, just wave real quick. Hi. There. All right, cool. Um, Lauren does a whole bunch of things. Founder, CEO, Spitfire coach, and the person that is going to dive deep in psychological safety. So, Lauren, since you have such an impressive background, I want you to, just give us a brief, high-level overview of who you are and a few things that make you so impressive. And since you have gone from guiding individuals and organizations, I'm very curious, since we're talking about psychological safety, how do you keep yourself psychological safe while juggling all these hats? So, floor is yours. You can talk about whatever you would like, and we're going to dive deep.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gary and April. I love what you guys are up to. And when April reached out about psychological safety and going deep, I didn't need to know anymore. I said, sign me up. Let's do this. So I have kind of been a lifelong entrepreneur. I started my first business at the age of 12 after learning how to crochet at 6. So I was interacting with people, understanding what made people tick, how to build connections, and then also understanding the kind of capacity limits of working with your hands. So I parlayed kind of this very handcrafted experience into working in business. I started working in insurance at 16 as an assistant, and then was also really working this business for developing hats. They were creating hats, going into New York City, hauling 2 suitcases up and down the subway stairs, working with other young designers. And I paid my way through college doing that. And when I went to go work after I graduated, I was like, you mean I only have to work 40 hours a week? This is amazing. But soon learned the limitations of that like go-getter mentality of I've got to be all things to all people. I've got to hold all these plates, and quickly discovered that I was depleting my immune system. I was compromising a lot of my values and putting myself in a lot of psychologically unsafe situations. So smash cut to 2015, I was living in Las Vegas, running a CrossFit gym, working full time, and I hit the wall. I hit the wall in my marriage, I hit the wall in my business, I hit the wall in my career, and in my health. I was sleeping at 2 to 3 hours at night and then napping when I could. It was miserable. And I literally hit the wall of the floor where I blacked out because I was using alcohol to compromise and to make things okay. And finally, I reached out to a coach who, in one session, changed my life. And it was really just asking me questions. And so that's how I kind of woke up to wanting to be the Spitfire coach, and to help people kind of unlock and uncover those special, unique qualities within them. So I got certified in 2015. I quit my job after I sold my house, got divorced, and moved back to DC 6 months after that. And so now we are a network of amazing ICF accredited coaches that go in and help with culture transformation, with leadership development. We do on-demand training. We do all that thing. But at the core, at the foundation level, is trust and psychological safety. Because what we noticed is that there is a lot of jargon. There are a lot of tactics, but without a strong foundation and a container of psychological safety, it maybe lasts for 2 weeks, if that. Or it does more damage because the expectation is so great. So we first start with individual accountability of how do I ensure I'm safe? What do I need to feel safe? And then how do we build skills to build those teams and communities and organizations that really create those ecosystems? So I'm not glossing over your question
No, keep
about
going.
how do I
Yes.
keep myself, this is not my dodge. I say that because I think a lot of times as coaches, we're so used to giving out that we forget about ourselves. And so through this journey of building this company, I've had to take some very hard looks in the mirror, lots of deep pauses of reflection to really see, where are my values in alignment and where am I being challenged? Because at the core of psychological safety, it is about that very element of, who am I, what's important to me, and am I honoring this, or am I challenging this? Am I threatening this? And so if we don't have a clear compass, if we don't understand who we are, if we're not taking those close looks and those points of reflection, we may be inadvertently putting ourselves in more and more situations that are challenging our psychological safety, and also stepping into environments that we know are absolutely not safe for us to be operating as our most vulnerable selves.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I have no idea what I just said, so my apologies if you want me to repeat it.
No, I'm like sitting here watching you, and I'm just like, you can tell how passionate she is about this. And it's so funny. So Lauren and I met through, we got certified through the same coaching program, but we never actually have met in person. I feel like I know you so well, but we haven't. But anyways, I didn't even know the part. I knew some of the parts before we met, but like some of the even, not working and like super hustling, I'm like, that's why we get along so well, because I kind of went through, and Gary too, like we all were in these environments where it was just like hustle, do, and we're good at that, we're good at doing, but to the detriment of our health. It's not always a great match, especially when you're not taking care of that foundational piece. And so yeah, it's amazing. So I'm just super excited, and we're going to dive in and talk. So, I think that like bare bones, I think a lot, like the term psychological safety for me, like I didn't even hear till more recently. So for people who are like, what is this webinar about? Maybe we should start there. So what is psychological safety?
I'm so happy that you asked, because I think so much of what I get frustrated by are these kind of big ambiguous terms that people don't define. And so we have an assumption of what it means, but we have no idea if it actually means the same thing to someone else. And I don't think we have a true understanding of what it is. So psychological safety, based on the definition from Dr. Timothy Clark, who wrote The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, is an environment of rewarded vulnerability. But what does that actually mean? And I think to understand that is to understand the history of the term. So 1965 was when it was first coined, and it was kind of this next stage. So we knew what physical safety was. You had a lot more awareness to being unsafe at the workplace, with factories, with children working, with all these things. So we had that understanding of like, we need to create more guidelines around safety, physical safety. But we didn't think about it from an individual of like, what allows someone to be good at their job or not good at their job. And so 1965, it first was coined. And then it wasn't until like the 1990s that people started to attach it to behaviors and attitudes of how it was expressed, but it was still very self-focused. And Dr. Amy Edmondson was involved with that, of looking at the individual to the team, of like, how does this person who is psychologically safe interact with the team or not interact with the team? So more, I geek out on sociology, is what I majored in college. And then almost like serendipitously, with all of the pandemic stuff, all the social justice stuff, 2020 is when Dr. Timothy Clark publishes his book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, which I think was the light bulb moment for me, because so much of when we talk about trust, when we talk about psychological safety, is seen in a binary lens. We have it or we don't. But to put it as 4 stages, it gives you the opportunity to think of it as a growing spectrum-based process. And so the idea behind it is not we're psychologically safe or we're not. It's where are we on this kind of spectrum? And so it looked at permission and respect. And so when you have lots of permission that you give to other people, you create a paternalistic environment where you're always seeking approval, you're seeking direction. Am I good enough? Am I okay? And then on the flip side, when we have high levels of respect, but we don't have permission, we are ripe for exploitation. And I think that's what we're seeing in corporate America right now, where it's like, you're asking me to work weekends, you're wanting me to come into the office and to innovate, but like, I don't feel like that the respect is there. I've given the respect, but I don't feel like I have the permission to push back. So it starts there. And then we have the 4 stages. So starting with inclusion safety. So I belong because I'm a human being. I exist and therefore I belong, I'm included. And then it always starts there. Beyond that, we have learner safety. So it's safe. I'm safe to learn. I'm safe to make mistakes without ridicule or retaliation. Now, after that point, not every person makes it to these next two stages, because some people in the workplace or in your life, you're like, okay, I'm cool just being in this learning model. I don't really want to take the risk beyond this. But if you do, then you get to contributor safety, which is results are what open up the contributor safety. So I have outcomes that prove that I can show results based on my expertise, my experience. And so now I'm going to be involved in a new level of meetings, of intel, of responsibilities. But not every person gets there. So if someone's new to a company or they don't necessarily have that track record, they're not going to get to contributor safety. And so the idea is I can contribute without fear of retaliation, retribution, ridicule, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Beyond that, and this is where I think companies get so tripped up because they want to be here, but very few do, is challenger safety. So I can disrupt the status quo, I can innovate, because our goal is to get low levels of social friction with high levels of intellectual friction. But it takes time because you have to build up all those other stages. And at any point, if you don't maintain that level, you go right back down to the starting point.
So true.
So everyone wants to get to this creme de la creme challenger safety, and they'll go out and say, we have challenger safety, we're innovative. And there's this amazing team assessment that we do where we can actually look at what are the behaviors that are contributing to psychological safety in these areas and what's actually hurting it and harming it or putting it at risk. So I know that was a big answer.
Yeah.
So if there are questions, clarifying questions, happy to take them in the chat.
So what are some of the behaviors that do contribute to safety and other behaviors that don't? Like, what are some examples?
Yeah, I mean, it can be something as simple as not clarifying a term.
Ooh, okay.
So ambiguity
Yeah.
challenges it. So when someone's in learner safety and they don't get that clarification or that further understanding, that threatens learner safety. If they've ever been told that their idea was stupid, if they were ever not invited to something, if they were ever, treated unfairly, like some of these behaviors are very benign on paper, but when we experience social rejection, it's the same part of the brain that feels physical pain.
Yes.
So it's all reading the same way. And so we have to be really cognizant of what could have happened or what might I have done in the past that could have led to this person feeling this way? Or where have I maybe experienced it and not been, maybe I've let it go, or maybe I laughed it off when in reality it was like that million cut. Like the sarcasm, I think, is a big contributor to it.
Ooh, yeah. And, so I'm thinking a lot about where, maybe the intent of, the external factors in your environment, like people, like if they tend to lead with sarcasm, but they don't have any ill intent around it, but you as the person receiving it, especially if it's, your boss who's being sarcastic to you, you're like, wait, are you joking or did I screw up? And it gives you that uncertainty. So yeah, going back to that ambiguity.
Could I just pause you there? Because
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought up intent, because when it comes to psychological safety, intention doesn't matter. Outcome does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from New Jersey. Sarcasm is my second language, probably is my first, but I have to be very cognizant of the environment that I'm in. And if I have to be very self-aware of, like, if I say something and like, I don't get that camaraderie or I don't have that established relationship, I can't use that as my forward approach in communication. So it's being able to read the room. And if it's like, oh, that's just who I am, that's just how I am. Literally, you could look at my family lineage and be like, if Lauren can make that change, anybody can.
Love you.
And I love how you mentioned that it's a spectrum, because up until chatting with you and learning about that book, I agree. Like I was of the like, oh yeah, we're either psychologically safe or not. But you paint it so clearly that like, oh yeah, there are stages, and I feel like that helps people, understand that, oh yeah, we're getting there. And what I love how you mention it's rewarded vulnerability, um, because to your point earlier, if you do have a psychological safe environment, and say you were being sarcastic, and someone took offense to it, um, if it was truly a psychologically safe environment, they would have the courage and the ability to sort of say, hey, Lauren, I don't appreciate that,
Mhm.
can you clarify, or something like that. So yeah, I love how you're making it more crystal clear so
Mhm.
that organizations can create that environment.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest fear that's kind of wrapped around it. When I hear pushback on it, it's like, well, can I just not joke around with people, or like, can we just not be honest in the office? And it's like, it's not about that, but it's about pulling back and being more aware and open to maybe some things that you're saying don't jive with other people, or they might be a little bit offensive or a lot of bit offensive. Like, it's awareness. And so I step in it all the time. I can't tell you how many times I do workshops on psychological safety, and someone loves to push back and weaponize psychological safety and say, Lauren, that's not psychologically safe. I'm like, tell me more. Like, I'm open to it. Because if you're not feeling psychologically safe, is that about you? Is that about me? But let's understand it.
Mm.
And I'm
Yeah.
I'm not going to fight. I just want to understand. But I don't take that like as a personal attack, which is a sign that I feel psychologically safe in the environment. Whereas that other person might not. But I want to understand, what are those contributing factors?
And that brings me to a really great question, because at this point, people might be realizing like maybe we have work to do. So, in your work, how do you go about assessing, where companies are, so that someone can maybe reflect back, and understand where they are on that spectrum? You have any
Yeah.
tips or
So
pointers?
so leader factor is who does the assessment. I actually got in this window of like the first 3 to 6 months during the pandemic to be certified as a coach for the 4 stages of psychological safety. They only now just sell their assessment. So everyone's like, how do I do it? I'm like, I don't know. They're not opening it up. But the assessment is amazing because it will have people answer a very short and sweet survey, but it will give you a red zone, gray zone, or blue zone score for each of those four and quantify it on a scale of -100 to +100. And then people will put their input in. Like, people are pretty honest. And so what we do is aggregate those results and put them into theme buckets. And then the workshop or the work that we do afterwards is, okay, knowing what we know in this, what is within our 30-day action plan to address this?
Mm.
Because I think a lot of companies do a disservice when they do these company-wide assessments or these team assessments, and then they either explain away the results or they do nothing with them. They bury them. So if you're going to ask someone to be vulnerable, you need to have a plan of approach to address it.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's so everybody in the team or the organization will take this and then they present the data. So do you get
Mhm.
certain situations where they're like, oh, it looks like we're psychologically safe, like we don't need to do anything? Like, they just want to have the data that looks good, and then if it's not, then it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I
um
don't ever doctor the data because I've never experienced a company that is quote unquote psychologically safe. There's always room for growth and
yeah,
improvement.
for
And I think that if that's the approach, then that's really not who we want to be working with anyway.
Good call.
yeah.
So I think there's always, even if you're, I asked people, I said, so where do you want these numbers to be? And I had a company say, well, we want to be at 100. I said, that's not realistic,
Yeah.
because not every person is going to get past the learner safety, right? So that's
Mhm.
going to impact your contributor and your challenger safety. It's just
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And if you had everybody that was in contributor and challenger safety, you're not necessarily actually having anybody doing the work. You're just kind of in idea mode.
Yeah.
So it's not about like the perfect, like we have to get 100, but it's about, where do we have opportunities to learn and grow from?
Yeah, I like that. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I geek out on the data. It's so good.
yeah, love data. That's why we love each other.
Right.
So I'm curious. I know that from the standpoint of organizations and teams, there's psychological safety is super important, right? Because you know in these situations, like, it's always about an interaction, and so taking that out of the workplace, there's also within the family or extended family, or your friend group, or any other clubs or organizations that you may be a part of, and you want to feel psychologically safe in those environments. So from the perspective of a organization, like a place that you work or whatnot, I almost feel like the push and the intent to improve on psychological safety has to come from the top, right? Because it can't just be somebody in the lower stages to be like, I want to feel more psychologically safe. But at the same time, there is, if that organization doesn't want to prioritize psychological safety, then you're kind of in a place, and you're a part of that organization. It's like you almost feel helpless, right? It's like you can either choose to like leave, or maybe you don't even have the permission to say like, hey, something doesn't feel right, can you fix this? But at the same time, we also want to think about what is it that we as individuals can do in those situations, and is the solution just to like leave, or are there other strategies and tips that we can do to create a more psychologically safe environment wherever we're at, if it's our organization or what? Because I do feel like, we shouldn't feel helpless about any, like, I feel like there's always something, just maybe this is the coach brain in me, there's always something that we can do. But when it comes to psychological safety, I don't know, it's so hard to say.
Tongue twister.
Where do we start? There's got to be stuff that we can do, even if we're not, at the top of our organization, to feel more psychologically safe. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it's a layered question. So I actually left this off of the history, but I think it's probably the most important one that companies want to know about, that they always point to, which is in 2012, Google published Project Aristotle, where they were looking for these contributing factors of high-performing teams. Psychological safety was the number one thing. It literally is the link to make everything happen in your business. And so I would question any company who's saying this isn't important to us, what their priorities are and what their values are. And so from an individual standpoint, I would have that point of reflection of saying, what do I have influence over? How I think, how I react, how I show up, and then where do you have influence with other people? So is it starting from, your small team, or maybe it's with your boss, or who are those people that you align with, that you have allies with, that are on the same page and want this? And then how much energy do you want to give it? Because the person who cares the least holds all the cards. If you care more than the C-suite about this topic, you are giving away your energy. And so I would ask, where is the best place to put that effort, that focus, that attention, those resources to actually put you in a better environment? And how much time do you want to give it?
Yeah. Oh my God, what if you don't want to give any time to it? No, I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, I stayed in a bad situation for 7 years because I was deep into that trauma of like, this is as good as it's going to get. I'm working remotely. No one else is going to hire me. Like, I had so much backstory. And it wasn't until I took stock and I realized I made these decisions that boxed me in, which means I can make a decision that might be painful short-term, but long-term is going to have amazing benefits.
Yeah.
And once I owned that decision, I was on fire with empowerment. I was like, let's go, because I took accountability of my actions. I started changing the way I was thinking about it. But if you want to stay in that life is happening to me, I don't like using the V word, but like if you were always on the receiving end of things happening to you, you're never going to feel like you can make things happen. But once you do, anything is possible. And obviously there are restrictions. If you have responsibilities at home, if you have financial restraints, it's making smart decisions, micro decisions every day that allow you to feel like you are owning your decision and owning your life.
Okay. Interesting. So I feel like I want to back up a little bit because you said something in this recent, I can't even remember what it was, but
I don't remember either.
It's this idea. I don't know. Gary, help me. He's like, I don't know. I can't read your mind.
Freedom of consciousness.
Something you said just triggered this thought of like, so how do you even identify if you are not feeling psychologically safe? Maybe that, I mean, I know that that's like, yes, I feel vulnerable, but there's the more tangible things. You've already peppered a whole bunch of examples in your discussion or everything that you're saying, but I almost feel like we need to call out like specific examples of like, you're not in a social, a psychologically safe environment if you're feeling this,
when
or
you feel this way.
Yeah. So just like some examples, and maybe it's, some in the workplace, some in life, right? Because I feel like you were mentioning something that maybe was a relationship, which is, in a partnership, which is a more of a life, not work, psychologically unsafe situation. So what are some additional examples? And I don't know, I guess me and Gary can also chime in with some thoughts of like,
well, I'm going to go real general in using your body. Your body is this amazing system of signals. So whenever you feel that gut tinge or the tension in your chest or pressure, it shows up as stress because literally it is threat detection. Now, some people, when they feel psychologically safe, and this is probably like the overarching theme, when it inspires performance, you're safe. When it inspires protection, self-protection, you are not safe.
Okay.
So some people, when they're like, oh my God, it's crunch time. Like, I've got to get this presentation done. Like, we're like, let's go. Other people are like, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. I don't know what I'm doing. That is a feeling of being unsafe.
Okay.
So even being invited into a new space, we could have that excitement of, I can't wait to talk to them. On the flip side, we could be like, well, am I meant to be here? Do I belong? What if I say something stupid? So it's kind of this fork in the road where we have feelings of being safe or unsafe, but it's being able to like understand, am I performing and excelling, or am I stuck or feeling threatened?
Yeah. Okay. Or is it I could be wrong, but I just thought of, is it this feeling of like, I want to do, or I choose to do versus like, I feel like I have to, or else.
Well, I will say people also get inspired from that language too. And that's why stress is so addictive, because we get the results that we want, but at what cost, And I think it takes that moment of pause after the fact and doing a retrospective of saying, what energy did I actually leverage to get this done?
Great point. Yes.
Was it in proactive or reactive mode?
Yeah. Oh, I say proactive and reactive all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, am I?
But are you exhausted after it, right? Like, is it not that good feeling of like satisfaction of like, yeah, I did it, versus like, oh, I need a week to recover from that. Like, it's like me walking up the stairs right now. Like, I need a full week to recover from it.
Yeah. Just wait. And then you've got like 18 years of your life that is all this.
People listening are like, what is she talking about?
Well, Lauren, what are you talking about? Why is it so hard?
Why is it so challenging?
Oh, well, I'm cooking up a little fuega. I've got a little baby Spitfire on the way. So
exciting.
Yeah.
Should we take a detour and like talk about how like we did a tarot reading a while back?
Yes, please.
Lauren,
do you want to shed the light since you shed the cards?
Shed the light. So you can disclose whatever you want to. I might share.
Well, so April was like, oh, I'm doing these tarot card readings for anybody who's interested. I'm like, I'm just super curious what's going to come up. And I think I got like the Ace of Cups and then the 2 cups.
I don't remember.
There were 2 cups in there. Like, it was just a lot of cups. And it was essentially like, listen, girl, if you want to get pregnant, you need to be around your man. Like, I'm like, oh, like biology and how things work. But I actually ended up getting pregnant on my 40th birthday. So togetherness.
Woohoo!
Yes. So, fertility queen over here, apparently.
Yes.
I love it. It's good. It's good. Okay. Back to serious.
Now back to the show. Oh my God.
Segue.
Okay. So so let's talk about some examples where you might not feel psychologically safe outside of the workplace, just so that people can latch on to like, oh, is that what I'm experiencing? Or just to even put a label on it. What are some examples where psychological safety might show up or lack?
Well, I mean, it's any environment that can feel new, or where you may be around people that you don't know, or that may have presented in a challenging or threatening way before. There's been certain social situations like networking events where like I've had not great interactions with people. And so I have to be, I'm not unsafe, but I'm definitely more guarded and protected. And so I think it's just a matter of like understanding where you are with relationships, even like, am I in inclusion safety, or do I feel like I'm wanting acceptance and that might actually be paternalism that's showing up? Or do I feel like people might be taking advantage of me with exploitation? So it's like, am I in a learning mode? Am I in am I contributing? So like you can actually see where you are on those stages and understand the depth of the relationship too.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. So I always feel like we talk about this in every webinar or every conversation that applies to anything. Always the first step to making change is just having awareness about it. So identifying like, am I psychologically safe? Am I not?
Well, I would even frame that question differently. How safe do I feel?
How safe do I feel? And then
because it's hard to be like yes or no. You're like,
yeah, that's true.
I feel like a 1 out of 10 right now. Okay, cool. What's that about?
Yeah. And then it's then making the decision. I'm trying to like do a step-by-step. Here's what you do. So like doing a gut check with yourself. How safe do I feel? And then the next step might be, do I want to do something about it? Would that be the next?
Yeah. Well, it's like, where do I feel like I am right now? And where do I want to be? And what's possible?
Yeah. And then trying to figure out, okay, if I do want to change, or if I do want to be in a more psychologically safe environment or feel more safe, then I need to employ XYZ strategies. And so how would one go about trying to figure out what those strategies might be? And I know that there's so many different ways and it's all dependent on that situation, but coming from this place of like, I want to do something, I want to be proactive about making myself feel more safe. How do I go about that?
Yeah.
Well, that's like a super open-ended question,
right. But I think it's using the coach approach to this of like, so if I felt more psychologically safe in this stage, how would I show up? What's different about how I'm showing up now versus that image of myself? And then that will give you some milestones or some areas of focus, because we might inadvertently be projecting our fear, our concern, our insecurities out there without even realizing it. So if when I'm in, when I'm in contributor safety, I feel super confident expressing my ideas. But if that's not how I'm showing up right now, what is it that I need? Do I need more support? Do I need more practice? Do I need to have one-on-one conversations with people? Do I need to just take the risk and take the leap? That gives you some strategies, but you have to first understand, how am I different when I feel this way compared to where I am now?
Interesting. And then how do you want to show up? I just checked in on the chat. Tasha was saying, does this happen mainly to introverts or both extroverts and introverts? So thinking about depending on your personality type and your interactions with people in that way, does this happen? Is there a shift between people who are more introverted and more extroverted?
It'll express differently. You may notice different signs and signals, but this is across the board. Every person, so imagine if you have ever felt rejected in any capacity, you felt unsafe at some point. So this is a very human experience because we're social beings. I think people who have more preference for extroversion might play it off better. They might have different strategies. They might seem like everything's okay, but I will tell you, as someone who is that way, I have experienced some major challenges and threats and across the board. It's just the act of being human. And so it's the awareness to it. It's the reflection. It's the patience and it's the persistence that really helps you learn about yourself in these environments.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's put some scenario tests and see if we can I don't know if case study is the right word. I just kind of want to walk through situations where I think there may be a situation where a person may feel psychologically unsafe and what they may do. Is that an okay?
Let's play with it. Let's say,
okay.
Yeah, play with it. Yeah.
So
Gary's like, let's play.
Let's say, I'm going to go back to a work example. So let's say you are in a situation where, you're working in an organization, you don't feel psychologically safe. You don't feel like you can approach your manager or your coworkers to kind of share this feeling, but you want it to change because you enjoy working there, but you want to feel more safe. Is that enough information?
So what I would push back on is give me more specific examples of, so when you say you don't feel unsafe, what does that mean?
Yeah. Or
What are some things that have happened? What are some things you've noticed? Because without specificity, you don't have a recommendation for that person to work with.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to remember the four stages, right? So there's that first, just like feeling included and feeling like you belong. So like, let's say at the very low level, you just don't feel like, nobody's like paying attention to what, or trying to include you.
I mean, it's not great you feel that way, but it's great to be able to work with that. So, if you feel safe with that person, I would first say, like, let's identify who you do feel safe expressing this with. And then doing the front end work of, okay, I feel like I haven't been invited to meetings. I feel like people don't engage me or approach me. And here's what I'd like to see. So we're actually coming at it from a solution-oriented mindset. We're addressing observations, we're objectifying it. So we're not in that trauma response. We're actually already in that solution response. So I've noticed, I've been here for a couple months and I don't really see people engaging me in meetings. And it's something that's really important to me. Like, I really want to be a team player. It'd be great if I could get involved in this. Then it's no longer about, I'm unsafe, fix it. But I'm not going to give you anything to work with.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So it will require having to find a safe space to share, this is what I'm feeling, and navigating some sort of, like, how can we work together to, make this more known across the board, or, almost having an ally to help you problem solve in the situation. Right.
Right. If you walk into a situation and say, I feel unsafe, what do you feel? What's the first thing that comes up for you? Like, if I say, April, I don't feel safe right now.
Like, I would say, tell me more, but what about your situation is making you feel unsafe? Like, can you give me an example of
where do you feel it in your body when I tell you I'm unsafe?
Oh, I feel bad. I don't know. I feel
you feel bad. You feel bad.
Empathy.
Yeah. I'm like, specifically where? Yeah. Like, yeah.
So we're no longer in solution mode. I'm like, let me make this better for you, or I'm going to get defensive if I feel like it's coming at me. So we have to set people up for success too.
Yeah.
If that's truly our way forward, if we want to remedy the situation, we got to check our energy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't discount your experience. If you felt unsafe, you felt unsafe. But if you can get yourself to a place of, how do I objectively communicate this with a solution or recommendation attached to it so that I can actually have my best chance of making a better outcome?
Yeah. So for anybody who's listening, don't go into a situation being like, I feel unsafe.
Well, but just role play it. Like, imagine that your friend said, I felt psychologically unsafe with you.
Yeah.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what we did. We don't know how to make it better.
Yeah.
So that's where we can do some legwork up front. And that's to say, like, maybe some of it is our interpretation of the situation, and maybe some of it is actually what happened. But your feelings are legitimate. They just might be lying to you.
Yeah.
That's a good point right there about the feel. Like, because as I was hearing you talk, I was thinking about, what if, the person, tends to be a little bit more passive. Maybe they don't have experience with advocating for themselves. And, how do they, one, acknowledge that, like what you said, take accountability and control of it. Like, is it me, or is it truly the environment?
Mm-hmm. Or it might be a mixture of both, but it's first taking responsibility of, okay, what have I experienced in my past? How am I feeling right now that might be contributing to this sentiment? And am I looking for evidence, or am I looking for solutions?
I love that. Love that. I'm going to go back to the chat. So Al says, I understand fully what Lauren is saying because I've been there and I'm going through that now. Al, if you have any additional questions, feel free to
Happy to help.
Yeah. This is the person who can help give you some insight. And then Bara said, if you have a coworker with whom you feel unsafe, a situation where they have stolen credit, smeared your reputation at work, and the expectation exists for your collaboration with them, with whom do you address these issues?
I would first address it with yourself. In that dynamic, what is most important to you? Where do you have influence? And what do you want the outcome to be? There are going to be people who try to steal credit all day long. But my question to you is, what do you want to get out of this? Where do you have wiggle room and influence? Because if we're just pointing fingers of they stole my idea, it actually makes you become the target, and that's not the outcome you want. So maybe this is more about, how do you self-promote more? How do you put yourself and contribute more in a more visible way? So if we get inspired versus judging or comparing, it actually can help us boost beyond the way. But this is always going to happen in any situation I've been or any person I've coached. When we try to like report them or do that, all we're doing is putting more energy on that behavior, and then we become a part of it. So it's more about how do you want to feel in this, and how do we start switching into that?
It's like the when they go low, you go high, right?
No, but sometimes you got to cut a bitch. Sorry
Yeah,
for the
right.
language.
Hey,
This is true. This is true.
that's
That
why
doesn't
I'm
mean
Spitfire.
like, just accept the behavior, have boundaries,
Yes.
but also use it as, what do you need to up level to?
Yeah.
What standard do you need to reset?
Yeah. And that's what this conversation is all about too. It's not about it is what's under our control to do when it comes to psychological safety, when there are people like external to us who we cannot control.
People are messy. They are so messy right now. I will tell you, I've been seeing so many demonstrations of just people. It's all energetic transference. Nobody has reset from the pandemic and from everything we've experienced in the last 4 months. We all have compounded trauma, and energy needs a home. So what you can say is no room at the inn, or this is the energy I invite in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can go move on to the next place. But you also have to be cognizant of the energy you're putting out too.
Absolutely.
Good point.
So here's a personal example that I'll say. So we know social media is like the best place to be, right? It was so funny. That was one of the first things I said as we were prepping to go live. It was like, I hate social media. There are a lot of places and maybe this is more of a personal situation that is real, where I don't like being on social media because I don't feel safe to express what I feel sometimes. Because I see other people expressing themselves, and it's just like either so outlandish or invites more anger, and so then everybody's just like arguing, but of course, like, because it's drama, I'm like slightly drawn to it, but I'm also like, I don't want to, but I feel like social media platforms in general, I don't feel safe because I could say something, I could offend somebody who may be reading something that I'm trying to say with a specific intent, and so I don't feel safe like being my authentic self, right? Or being vulnerable, maybe amongst my friends, but like in more public forums, I have to be a little bit, I'm a little bit more nervous. And so like in certain situations, like just even showing your presence online, like how do you do that in a safe way? Or how do I, as an individual who's like immersing myself in the sea of all these people who may or may not know me, how do I present myself and feel safe doing it?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You have the power of choice. You have the
Yeah.
power of how much, what, when, who, all of that. There is no requirement as a business owner or as a human being on how much you have to post and what you need to say.
Yeah.
What I will say is that when you are clear on the impact and who you want to reach, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's your choice if you read it and engage in it.
Yeah.
But I always look at it from the lens of who could I be helping by sticking my neck out and doing this?
Yeah, that's true.
I don't make it about me. But
Yeah.
I've also been on, during the pandemic, I had a very front-facing presence because I was part of a performance act. And it made me really uncomfortable because it felt like I was then vulnerable and susceptible to criticism, to demands, to feeling uncomfortable. And I just, quote unquote, had to take it. And that was actually the point where I stopped doing it because I had to put myself in a safe environment. So it's checking in with yourself of where do I have control? Where am I giving away my power, and where can I have it back and actually empower other people and myself in the process?
Yeah.
So real quick, when you said performance act, what do you mean by that?
So I had a duo live stream show during the pandemic.
Okay.
I was on CNN and PBS. It was great fun in the beginning, but nobody sees the comments and what unwanted attention can bring. And as someone who's a relatively private person, like, yes, I'm front facing with my company. I didn't ask for it. Like, I was literally doing it to bring joy in a really hard time. And I was like, no.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, what does that mean? Is that a metaphoric performance act? Or like,
She was
No,
just
I was trying to be coy, but apparently called me out.
now everybody's gonna
You
like
can Google it. It's
go
fine.
go.
I've gotten over it. Lots of therapy bills afterwards.
Oh,
It's fine.
so what I'm hearing then is also making sure that that you make it a regular practice to just check in with yourself to say like, you know,
Right.
how safe it could be a journal prompt, right?
Well, it's like just scanning your body. So like when you see that, like if you see like a negative comment, where do you feel it in your body? What is it bringing up that you need to pay attention to and heal?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so if you are, you know, getting that, you know, those comments or that extra scrutiny that you didn't ask for, um, it's having to decide how to address that either
Yeah.
by removing yourself from it or maybe even shifting your mindset about, you know, I'm not going to impress everybody. There are going to be people, there are going to be haters.
Mhm.
And so being able to be okay with that on your own, and it
Yeah.
depends on your situation in terms of which way you go.
And it's not even social media. Like, so when I do these workshops in psychological safety, I'll get at least one or two people who push back and who have something really negative to say. The first time I got it, someone said, I don't feel psychologically safe in here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I challenged them on a very limited and judgmental and discriminatory comment. And people will weaponize what you say because of the situation they're in. And so the question that I always go back to is, did I do my best? Was I living in purpose? And was I acting on purpose? And if I can say yes to those three questions, I'm like, I can get up the next day and feel, I might get knocked on my butt. It might hurt a little bit. It might sting because we're human, but I know that I did my best and I'm doing my work.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a great point of, you know, you talked about like as someone, the receiver of that, of, you know, asking probing questions, especially, you know, like what you said, you ask those questions yourself and then ask questions to the other person.
Mhm.
So, you know, what if at the end of the day they choose, you know, hey, they don't feel safe. Like, what is the, all right, you know what? We agree to dis like, how do you
Yeah.
approach that situation?
I always leave the space open and I invite them to talk to me when they're ready. But I've learned from that first experience to just give people space. And actually in the last time that I did this in the similar group, I had a convert. I had two people who were very resistant. One of those people became my biggest champion by the end of the workshop. She's like, "Thank you. I get it now." So it's just giving people room to breathe. I'm not here to change you, but I am here to reflect what I see. I'm here to teach. And I always say, listen, think of it as a buffet. Take what you want, double up, triple up if you want, discard what you don't. I don't take offense to it, but I know what works. And I clearly am hired to do something here. So I know that I'm not for everyone. So if I can get a 90% approval, great. There's always going to be at least 10%, probably more, that don't like me, but at least they'll have an opinion.
Yeah. Love that. Shall I go back to the chat?
Right.
So Al said my situation is actually very unique, but I'm picking up ideas from this chat. Yay! Tasha says this reminds me of the TED Talk "How to Deal with Difficult People" with Jay Johnson and Barry Tesler's work. Bara said, in an environment you can't physically leave for whatever reason, like a family, is it a matter of self-evaluation and setting boundaries and self-care?
I would say find a physical safe space in those situations, like especially with family. I would go out for walks. I would have just time to check in with a corner, or I would find an animal to put my energy towards.
Ooh,
So if you know that you're primed for getting triggered, just come up with a couple strategies to do. You can even just tap your fingers. It just helps to recenter, or have a word of intention. When you leave that space, how do you want to feel? So to me, it's like I was neutral or I was at peace. That's how you can kind of help yourself in those moments that feel kind of impossible to get out of. But I don't want people doing this at work for too long, because you absolutely have choice.
Yeah, you do.
You are not stuck. And I know that from experience, where I convinced myself for 7 years that I had to be there. And with my marriage of I have to make this work. I'm responsible. You have to ask yourself, responsible for what? Responsible to who?
Yeah.
Just follow up the question. That's all we need to do, and just be curious with it. And once you can actually answer those questions, you will have a strategy forward rather than feeling imprisoned by your decision.
Yeah. one of the things that I'm wondering is that, like, if you are in a situation where you feel unsafe and you feel like you've done everything that you could possibly do
Mhm.
to to put yourself in a safe place, but it's just not working, like,
Yep.
is the only other solution to just
Get the hell out of there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And you can use abuse situations, but I would say like the willingness in the participation of it is almost like self-abuse, but we
Yeah.
convince ourselves we can make it better, we can make it better. And if you feel like you have exhausted all options, you know what you need to do. And actually, I was working with a client who was in a pretty hairy situation with a not great relationship, and she described this process. And I want to share this with the listeners because I thought it was so brilliant. It's not my idea. She said, I went into the dressing room and I tried on different decisions. And I really liked the way I felt in this one.
Yeah.
So try on the decisions and see how you feel.
Yeah. Because you can always change it.
You can change your decision, but if you get that full body of like, yeah, this is the thing, and then you don't act on it, your body knows.
Yeah.
Your body knows. There's a great book. I have been trying to finish it because it's so good, but it's so dense. The Body Keeps the Score. It knows.
So dense. Yes, it does.
It's so good, but I'm like, I fall asleep to it. And this guy I was talking to, like at our workshop, he goes, "How are you sleeping after reading that?" I'm like, "Not well, not well." But that's to say, your body knows what's right for you, and when you can train yourself to listen and act on it, it rewards you.
Mm-hmm.
Stress is a killer. It creates inflammation. It's sending people to early bad situations, if not death, and it impacts your relationships. The way that you de-stress yourself, the way that you practice well-being and everyday self-care is to listen to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen to your body. So simple.
Are there any cases where like stress isn't tied to psychological safety?
Well, stress is the manifestation, the representation of a perceived threat.
Mm-hmm.
Perceived threat. So your experience could be positive. You could have a performance response. I could see it as a threat that's not based on my past. So I would say stress in moderation or stress when used to your benefit is a good thing. Like I've had a lot of really challenging things happen in the last 2 weeks, but I've paid attention to it. I haven't gotten inundated by it. I'm like, oh, pay attention. What is this?
Yeah.
Get curious. What's this asking you to pay attention to? And it's helped me be much more of a critical thinker and to bring in more resources and to not try to just solve it on my own, but to really bring in my community.
Yeah. I love that.
Like, what am I missing? What do I need to see here?
Yeah.
And you bring up a good point. I forgot the name of the book, but they were talking about dealing with stress.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that we don't realize, and this is why it builds up, is that so stress originally, was like that fight, flight, or freeze response for something that is immediate, that is happening right now. And then once it happens, we go through the stress relief of like, whatever that is. Yeah, right. And sometimes it's chill, like shivers. It's like a real thing. However, in our stress, because it could be psychological, it could be all these other things, we never go through the stress relief. And I love how you mentioned, checking in and just being mindful of like, oh, I'm in stress right now. And sometimes we have to be intentional about releasing that stress, knowing that, all right, that situation at work is still there. However, I need to care for myself and I need to get through that. And I remember in the book, it's going to.
I think it was a woman who wrote it, and she was bringing up
two
like
ladies.
Music. Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to her on a podcast.
Yeah. And so
I wish I remembered it.
One of the things she was talking about is you can lie in bed and you can like go through the like this shivery thing, but like it's to release the
so
stress.
we call it the blither. So it's actually a somatic awareness technique.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I actually got certified last year in core centering techniques, which is about getting back in your body first, then focusing on your breathing, and then having a future vision to focus on. And a lot of people will get into their head that their brainwaves are just too like hyper to be able to get to that place of actually helping to rewire your brain and to resettle. So the blither is literally taking a deep breath and then shaking out like a wet dog. I do this in my workshops. People think I'm nuts, and I will always continue to do it. But it could be something as simple as when you notice stress or friction pop up, tapping your fingers, tapping your legs, having some sort of body connection, like wherever you're feeling tension or stress, just put your hand on it and take a deep breath. It's self-soothing. This is what we used when we were babies.
Mm-hmm.
We had physical touch. Some people didn't, and that's why they have a lot of compounded trauma too. Like if there was any abandonment there, but you literally have the opportunity as an aware human being to self-soothe, to get back into your body, to allow your breath to self-regulate, to bring it back down, and then to focus on that future vision of how you want to feel.
I love that.
I love that.
And it's like coming back to a safe place that
You are your own safe place.
Yeah.
Like, so even when you're in the chaos, how do you create that safe space for yourself?
I love that.
Yeah.
Woo.
I get goosebumps when I talk about this stuff.
I know. That's why I'm so happy that you're here. So I know that I was just looking at the time. I'm like, I knew this was going to go by so fast, and we could totally talk for like 4 more hours. But
and I do.
I know, right? But I feel like we're at the point where I almost, if we had to package, if somebody like fast forwarded through all this amazing conversation, but we're just like, what's the point of this whole hour? Like, Lauren, what are the main ideas and takeaways that you would want if they only heard like 3 or 4 sentences of your amazing wisdom? What are the things that you want people to take away from this hour? For those of them that had spent the hour with us, thank you guys. Or so clip it down. What are the main takeaways that you want us to not forget?
Yeah, well, I think the first is psychological safety is on a spectrum. It's not binary. We can always assess where we're at. The second part is when we don't feel safe, what is it that we need to feel safe? So let's get specific. Let's be objective. Let's be solution focused. And the third part would be, how do you create more of that safe space for yourself? So how do you get back in your body, regulate your breath, and then use your future vision and maybe do some brainstorming on some ideas of where you can make more empowering choices so you can be accountable to your psychological safety.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all starts with us. I feel, we can, blame away to all the external factors, but those are things that we can't control. And we can also choose to remove ourselves from those situations if it comes to that. But if we're in a situation where we can't or don't want to, then how do we get ourselves to the place of the most safety within the confines of what we can control, right?
Well, and it's really hard to make forward-thinking decisions when we do feel unsafe, when we're under stress and duress. So that's why I say, like, get back in your body first, because that's going to give you so many insights on what is the decision I need to make today? What's the decision I need to make next week, next month, next year?
Good point.
And this stuff unfortunately, it's not necessarily the most easy thing to do.
No, it sounds really simple, but it takes diligence. And like, that's why working with a coach will help you process this stuff. I mean, I do a lot on my own, but it's because I have, 8+ years of working really in depth. And I do have a coach too, but a lot of my practice is about teaching people how to self-coach. So how do you become aware? How do you get more curious? How do you use the tools in real time to prevent all of these like rollout impacts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's huge. Like, having that feedback loop for yourself is essential, yeah. So
how did we just spend an hour? That went by so fast.
So fast. But
we're in it.
Lauren, we should tell everybody where they can find you, where they can Google all your performances during the pandemic.
Oh, Jesus. I tried to bury them.
Oh, we should also show your ABCs of awesome living, or I guess. This was this book. If you guys haven't read it, it's a collaborative book that Lauren spearheaded, and both Gary and I are in there, as well as Rebecca, our other.
Wow, we had everybody on it.
We had a lot of ASC influence on this. Lauren is in our community, and I don't even think we talked about like our community, the Accountability Success Circle. We've been around since 2017 or 18, one of those years. And, we're just a community that's focused on helping people accomplish their personal and professional goals in the most fun and balanced way. Like, so we bring the focus and the intention and the fun. And Lauren's there. So you can find her there if you want to join us at accountabilitysuccesscircle.com or just learn more. But Lauren, where can we find you on all the other
things?
Safe social media spaces.
I don't know how safe they are. I'm not responsible for them.
Yes.
But you can go to spitfirecoach.com. We have tons of resources there. And you can go at Spitfire Coach. We also have the Spitfire podcast. I think we are on episode 202. I started in 2017. So a lot of the concepts that we talked about today, I will bring up in kind of real life scenarios of things that I'm noticing, because that's just how I roll. But
you have other books as well.
Other books. Yeah, we just put out 365 daily journal prompts. So if you need help in your journaling, it's a great resource. And then my first book was called Spitting Fire, How to Reignite and Maintain Your Fire at Work, Home, and Beyond.
Love it. Love it. Amazing. And then what's your social media platform of preference if people wanted to follow you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn
So
is the safe
Lauren
space for
LeMunyan.
me. Although I did do some TikToks, which I was very inspired by, because I talked about a really awful tool that people were promoting called Elmo. So if you go on my YouTube channel, I do a nice little rant on it. I curse.
Right.
So
Cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, if you want to see Lauren curse, yeah, go.
I drop an F-bomb. It's good.
We love it. But Lauren, thank you so much for being here. This was super, super fun. And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much, either if it's live or replay. Hope you had some amazing takeaways, and feel free to share your ahas. You can see the chat or comment, on all the YouTubes and everything. Or you can come hang out in our community, accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. We have an amazing goal challenge that we're launching next Thursday for Goal 30, our second run for the year. If you're interested and want to know more about that, the address for that is goal30.accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. But if you need some accountability to get your goals done, maybe it's a psychological safety goal, come join us, because it could be any goal you want, professionally or personally. And thank you, Lauren. We so appreciate you, and so many exciting things coming your way. Can't wait. But for those of you who are on the live stream, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
Yes.
So yay.
Bye,
See
everyone.
you guys later.